Alderman Boyd,
Present.
Alderwoman Davis,
Present.
Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderman Kotar,
Here.
Alderwoman Spencer,
Present.
Alderman Odenberg,
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Present.
Chairman Rhodey.
Present.
7 present, you have quorum.
Okay, little housekeeping. We were going to have a presentation on the economic development plan this morning. To do that, we're going to slow the meeting down and have it at 10 o'clock because over at the TIF Commission, they were having, I guess, I shouldn't say an indoctrination, but when you bring on new people,
Oh, there's
kind of a welcoming and kind of a introduction to their responsibilities. Indoctrination is probably the wrong term.
was the
I
right
think that's what
word.
happens in communist camps. They asked us to push this back for an hour. We scheduled that a few weeks ago, and then as we got closer to it, what happened was the economic development plan, which we anticipated being done by now, is not. It's several weeks away, and I thought that would probably be better to wait several weeks. Given that we had, I thought, quite a bit on our agenda today, and we wanted to make sure that we had time for this, and I'm sure everybody's schedule's busy, and why not wait till we get if it's just a couple more weeks, we'll get the final product. So I will, this is our last meeting of this session, and I will be working with Gerard, the SLDC people in zoning, and try to start getting out a schedule for next session as soon as we, before we come back, and hopefully the economic development plan will be one of the first topics that we bring up then. So that's why we aren't doing that. We do have a few board bills today. As we generally try to do, we try to capture the folks who are not on the committee and provide them an opportunity to be heard first, and then those who are all on the committee, we would then circle back. We have Alderman Bosley's bill is the first one on here, but I don't see him present. I haven't heard anything from Alderman Bosley, so, but Alderwoman Martin is present, and she has board bill number 8 and is not on the committee, so we'll go ahead and take up board bill number 88 if that's appropriate with everybody. Alderwoman, would you care to step up?
Good morning. All right. As Chairman Rhodey said, I have Board Bill number 88. You should have this as a committee substitute. And actually a technical question, shouldn't it say committee substitute?
Generally, we start off with board bill number 88, and then what
We'll
we
adopt
do,
the committee substitute.
There should be, hopefully somewhere.
Okay. Oh, can I get a...
So why don't we, if there is a committee substitute, the chair will entertain a motion that we put before us the committee substitute for.
second.
Second. Oh.
Been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. We called the roll.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Alderman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderman Kotar, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Odenberg, Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Chairman Rhodey.
All right.
7 aye votes.
Okay, now that we have board bill number 88 committee substitute appropriately before us, go ahead, Alderwoman, proceed.
Thank you. One, I appreciate everyone bearing with me on this piece of legislation. It's been pretty complicated. As most of you know, we've been trying to amend 2 separate ordinances, one originally by Alderman Kennedy and the second one by Alderman Jeffrey Boyd. I think this is a much simpler version of it, and to best explain it, it adds prevailing wage, which is a base wage for construction projects that receive city incentives. So think of it like a minimum wage, but for the construction workers. Since I started this legislation, filing my first version of it, the TIF Commission actually has already adopted this. So that's taken care of as far as projects receiving TIFs. And then also, the county has also adopted this as well in the last few months. I think this is only fair to local contractors, as it does make it a level playing field as far as what they're paying here in the city versus what someone might be paying out of state or central Illinois or somewhere in a rural area. I think this also it will increase our earnings tax as well, obviously higher wages. And I think that this also brings that you'll have more quality or a quality workforce. Some of these jobs are very dangerous, especially one big concern has been abatement when you're dealing with asbestos and other types of hazardous materials. I do have one amendment. I know I want to adopt this first, but I just want to talk quickly about on section, sorry, I have it in my copy. I would like to add to section 15, demolition and pre-construction, just to make it consistent. It was just a technical error. It was left out.
Section,
On section, if you go all the way to section 15, line 20, it should also have pre-construction and demolition as well. It's listed in labor hours in the definition, but it just didn't, on this version for whatever, it just didn't make it in that new language.
reconstruction. So currently, if I'm reading this correctly, it says determined at time each relevant phase of construction, reconstruction, improvement, enlargement, alteration, painting.
Correct.
Great. Our repair begins in the, so where did you say in pre-construction, where did you want to?
It would be demolition and pre-construction on page 9, line 18.
Page 9.
It might be helpful to introduce the
Committee sub first, and then
committee substitute, which is what we will end up approving.
do the amendment.
I think that's before us. That was our last motion.
Okay,
So we have the committee sub before us, and now we I believe they're going to be offering an
well, let's
amendment.
not refer to the original bill anymore.
So we add the correction to the correction.
Right, that was confusing. Just
Right.
refer to your committee substitute,
Right.
because it has the wording right.
Do
Chairman, can I
that first.
inquire, just for a point of clarification here? Alderwoman, are you, so on page 9, where you want to add demolition and pre-construction, would you do that before the word construction on line 20? Demolition, pre-construction, construction?
Yes.
Construction, et cetera. I think you also probably, do you need to do that in your definition of labor hours? Because I don't, unless I'm missing it, I don't see
should be.
demolition and pre-construction in your definition of labor hours.
Yes, it was in the original. If I have another, yes, it should be in there. It should have been in there yesterday.
You need it in both spots.
So can't
Yes,
we
I
do
need a new
this
amendment.
For everyone's,
Go back.
that's on page 4, line,
first? Can we do this
14.
first and then go back with the amendment?
Probably need to
It's
go
not on
through
this
the whole
version.
thing.
Do we need to have amendments properly in writing before us, I believe? So,
It was in the sub that I received yesterday, that we all received in our emails yesterday.
Is that different than this?
Yes.
Chairman, can I go get Louis Galley?
yeah, I thought he was, is he not here? I thought he walked in a minute ago.
Grab him?
Yeah, we need to get the properly before us.
Yes. Yeah, so in the one that was emailed yesterday afternoon, about 3 o'clock, this was in the labor hours definition, but it was not in section 15.
Just talk about this. So we will, while we're waiting for that, I think we should probably proceed here. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding everything. Alderwoman, if you could. So we are going to create if a project receives either TIF or tax abatement, and the project is either commercial or residential above 20 units, is that correct?
Correct, and over $1 million.
So it has to be over $1 million.
Correct.
So a commercial project under $1 million would not necessarily.
Correct.
Okay. Where are we at right now on, can you explain for us where we are right now as far as the prevailing wage? When we receive block grant money, anything funded with block grant money is subject to prevailing wage, is that correct?
Yes, under federal law, that would be under, that would require prevailing wage. And then there's some state programs that also require, generally anything government funded, as a rule of thumb, is mandated to, it requires prevailing
But
wage.
we have never done anything like that with our local incentive programs.
I believe under, I'm not the expert on this, but I believe under the Slay administration, there were some policies under executive orders that required prevailing wage.
Okay, but it was never,
It's never been codified.
it's never been codified in the form of an ordinance then? Okay.
And there's also been a little bit of, there's been a question on, even with the minority workforce numbers, on whether or not that mattered when it came to the pre-construction and demolition. That's kind of always been a gray area. And that is probably, that's the most dangerous work, really.
Do we have, when we make these requirements with our local incentives, are we doing it in a way that's consistent with our other whether it's prevailing wage, is that the same with our MBEWE requirements? And
Yes,
is it kind of
so-
uniform across the board so that we don't have different sized projects that have to conform to different?
The $1 million threshold, no. I believe as far as the minority workforce and the contractor requirements go, I don't believe there's a threshold on that dollar-wise. I think it's any projects receiving the incentives. So this would be a little bit different with that.
Okay, but the federal does not have any size limitations?
Correct. Correct. If you received, if we don't do it the same, but if, for instance, a facade, the old facade program, or if you received money for that, or any
Block grant for housing?
block grant, anything like that, yes.
And how about the LIHTC program? Is that subject?
Yes, it is.
All of those are subject to prevailing wage then? Okay. Why don't we go through at least while we're waiting? Alderman Boyd, do you have any questions?
Sure, I just have one question to make sure I'm in line. So on page 9, let's go to line 11. It says section 3.
Yes.
And then when you get to, so section 3 says ordinance number 69-427 is hereby amended by the addition of a new section, section 15, to be and read as follows. So I'm guessing there's a section 15 inside section 3. Am I reading that correct? It looks kind of confusing.
It is, but it would be section 3 of the bill, but we're amending section 15 of that ordinance.
Right. Oh, I got you. Okay.
By adding a new section.
Well, I like the bill. I know you spent a lot of time on the bill. I appreciate all your patience on trying to get this done, and I would like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Thank you very much.
No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you for all of your help.
Alderwoman Davis.
I have no questions, thank you.
Thank you.
He not coming.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
No questions.
Alderman Kotar.
No questions, Mr. Chairman. I know Alderwoman from the 11th's been working on this for quite a while. I would also ask to be added as a co-sponsor.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Spencer, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one question on the definition of abated project. Just being, and I apologize for not knowing the answer to this, the single or multifamily dwellings with 20 or less units, does that include small projects that would have a commercial component?
Yes, so the threshold is $1 million across the board, but then as far as, say, you wanted to buy a 12-family, 12, or like one with commercial on the bottom, you're saying, right? Yes, correct. If it's under $1 million, then it would not qualify.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Oldenburg.
No questions. Alderwoman, I'd love to be added as a co-sponsor too. You got this in really good shape. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Boyd.
I have no questions. Congratulations.
Thank you, and thank you for working with me on it as well.
You're welcome.
We're going to do something a little unusual. I believe there's some confusion on this in that our attorney is working on trying to resolve some of the, I guess, difference in issue, what we have over here versus what was emailed and so forth. So, Alderwoman, we will take this up as soon as he comes over here.
All right, I think there's just, yesterday we added that, it may have just not been the correct version printed, so. And we also added co-sponsors at the last hour as well, so.
Okay, we will just, put that aside for right now, and we will bring that up again as soon as he's over here. Is Alderman Todd or Bosley in today? Has anyone heard from either of them as far as taking up their board bills? Okay, then we get into my board bills, and then we have a resolution from Alderwoman Middlebrook, and then we have a project, I guess, from Alderwoman Hubbard. Let's, for the sake of, well, we can always circle back to that. Why don't we go ahead and just start through some of these? Is someone here who can speak to Alderwoman Middlebrook's, somebody from SLDC? Alderwoman Middlebrook?
Yeah, because she's out of
Zach's
town.
supposed to speak
She's out
on
of
that.
town, and she has asked me to, she sent me the resolution, and asked me to speak to it. It's just that I thought if
TIF
there,
commission is run long, so I'm not familiar with it. I'll go see Zach stepped out, I think, to see what the status was of.
okay, so we will,
A lot of the people we need are over there.
yeah. I think they would do a better job of it than I would.
Hubbard.
Alderwoman Hubbard, would you like to take up do you feel comfortable taking up your project now, Alderwoman?
Now Zach is here.
Okay, which one are you talking? Okay, what are we doing here? Zach, are you?
Do the
We
resolution.
get so confused. That's fine.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
do the resolution now, and then we'll take yours up immediately after that, Alderwoman.
Okay. You're doing the resolution for square, are you?
Oh, no, this is for Middlebrook.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Sorry about that. Resolution 10171 is for 401 Withers Avenue. It's in the North Riverfront neighborhood. It's in the enterprise zone. It's an expanding business. This business, Global Furniture, is currently located in Midtown. They are leasing the property, so they would like to buy. So they found this property at 401 Withers. They are planning on buying it for $230, planning 170, renovating for 170, be 1,900 square feet. Retain 9 jobs to the city and create 5 new ones. The tax abatement would be 10 years for 95%.
Are there any questions of Zach? Alderman Boyd?
Yeah, Zach, tell me again, what's going on here? What's the developer doing?
They're currently located in Midtown, and they leased the property, and their lease is expired, and the current building is going to be used for something else, so they were looking for something in the city, and they found this location in North Riverfront. They manufacture furniture, and they'll also have office space at this location.
So it's basically where there's no retail, or is it?
No retail. They do most of their online or by job. They do a lot of universities and corporations.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Alderwoman Davis?
No questions.
Alderwoman Hubbard?
No questions.
Alderman Kotar?
No questions.
Alderwoman Spencer?
No questions.
Alderman Oldenburg?
No questions.
Alderwoman Boyd?
No questions.
Hearing no questions, the chair will entertain a motion that we pass out of committee resolution 171.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, please.
Previous roll.
There's a request for previous roll. Hearing no objection, we will consider Board Bill number 171 passed out of committee with a do pass recommendation.
Excuse me, Chairman. Alderwoman Hubbard wasn't on previous roll.
Oh, she was?
Probably was.
She wasn't.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Well,
I'll
well-
rescind.
I object to previous rule.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll object to previous roll, and somebody voting on the prevailing, so we won't go through all the formality of that. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderman Kotar, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Oldenburg, Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Chairman Rhodey.
Aye.
8 aye votes.
Okay. Alderwoman Hubbard, did you care to step up?
Oh, Lord, girl. I wonder if this Jesse time that he's supposed to be. I don't think he knows.
Alderwoman, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Are we doing Resolution 178 first or Board Bill 156? They're connected, so I don't know which one you want to hear first. Probably the Board Bill. Yeah, I have, it's a resolution number 178,
Last item on the agenda.
and then there's a Board Bill 156.
Okay.
They're companion.
At your pleasure,
Okay.
Alderman, if they're interrelated, we can.
Yes, they are.
Perhaps you can speak to the overall project and then explain what each of them do, and then we can take them up one at a time. If that's-
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm here on behalf of Board Bill 156 and 178. This is regarding the Square project. We just passed 3 bills regarding that whole development last week. We perfected them, and they'll be up for passage this week. And there's so many moving pieces to this puzzle of a development, but it's definitely a asset to the city and as well as the Fifth Ward, bringing over 1,250 jobs to the Fifth Ward. So what Board Bill 156 does is it authorizes the issuance of bonds and approves the tax abatement and sales tax exemption. There's a personal property tax abatement. It's limited to 10 years, 75% in years 1 through 5, and 50% in years 6 through 10. The project involves the acquisition and installation of approximately $16 million of new equipment and personal property and $32 million of real property improvements of 900 North Tucker Boulevard. And that's 156. In summary, I can definitely bring some people up that could explain things in more detail regarding the timeline, regarding some of these things that were already in place when they were in Cortex. It's been explained to me that actually overall this would be better for the city with their move and how this thing is being structured. So at this time, I would like to defer to people who are associated with Square who may be able to delve deeper into the woods on where we are with the Board Bill 156.
Thank you, Alderwoman Hubbard. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, name is Jay Shyman from Square. I learned my lesson from being down here quite a bit, but it's a pleasure to be back before each of you. As the Alderwoman noted, I'm happy to answer questions as it pertains to this project. I also want to note that Michelle Stuckey from St. Louis Partnership is also here to delve deeper into the matter, and also the author of both of these pieces of legislation. Mark Spikerman can also speak explicitly to the legislation before you. At this time, I welcome any questions that you may have.
Jay, perhaps you can help explain, because I think I handled this when they actually came to town originally. When we do, they talk about $50 million worth of tax-exempt notes. That's really not $50 million of it. Will you explain how the transaction works, what we have to have?
Right.
A public entity acquire the property?
Mark can certainly handle that one.
Okay.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Alderman. Yeah, these are not tax-exempt bonds like the kind that the city would use to build a city facility. These are taxable industrial revenue bonds. They are payable only from lease revenues paid by Square, not from any city taxes. They exist basically solely on paper to facilitate a tax exemption. The $50 million number, that represents Square's investment. Square's anticipating about $16 million in personal property spend and up to $32 million, $34 million in construction material spend on their tenant build-out. That's where we get the $50 million from. The actual abatement is obviously much less than that because taxes on a $50 million investment are a fraction of that.
So if it's we have a public entity that actually, a public entity is actually going to own that, is that correct?
Right. So the
public entity does not pay the taxes, the personal property tax?
Right. The city of St. Louis itself, Square gives a bill of sale for its computers, its furniture to the city. The city then leases it back because the city owns it. It's tax exempt. The condition of that lease is that the Square pays payments in lieu of tax equal to, in this case, 25% in years 1 through 5 and 50% in years 6 through 10.
And that is a higher percentage than what it was originally when it was in Cortex, is that correct?
Yeah, Michelle, do you remember for 10 years? Yeah, 100% for 10 years was the 2015 Square deal.
And all of this will be, it's for the build-out in equipment for the new office,
Right.
the old Post-Dispatch building downtown then, is
Yep.
that correct? And none of that pilots or any of that will be captured by the TIF then?
No, the TIF does not capture personal property taxes at all, so this is totally outside the TIF.
And when we ran all the TIF numbers for the project downtown, we anticipated the personal property taxes
Yes.
being excluded, so all the previous, this is consistent with all the previous numbers that we've seen?
As far as I know, yeah.
Okay. Let's go through and see if there's any questions. Alderman Boyd, do you have any questions before we take up the specific resolution and board bill then?
Sure, I just want to be clear. So we're abating the construction materials during the redevelopment process, correct?
Yeah, so this board bill and the accompanying resolution accomplish three things. It's personal property tax abatement, which is on the value of the personal property tax or the personal property each year as it depreciates, and then sales tax exemption on the construction materials. So when they go and buy wood, screws, nails, paint, they can avoid paying sales tax on those items. And then finally, sales tax exemption on the actual purchase of the personal property, the computers, the furniture. When we were here a couple weeks ago with the similar bill for Anheuser-Busch, you had asked about sales tax exemption on manufacturing equipment. That is statutory automatic. the sales tax exemption on office equipment like this, furniture, computers, that is discretionary by the Department of Economic Development. Department of Economic Development has approved this project, subject to the city also approving it.
Okay. So Square is moving out of Cortex to this building, right?
Right.
And they already have a lot of office equipment and stuff, right?
Yeah, they do, and I don't know if you want to handle that, but.
Right, this is viewed as an expansion, so we definitely have office equipment at this time, but we're looking to increase our current workforce, and in order to equip them with the tools that they need, the purchasing of new equipment will also need to follow.
And what's the projected cost of the new equipment?
So at this juncture, it's just an estimate because those equipments have not, and materials have not been purchased at this time. So depending on what the price point is at that juncture, we'll have a more solid number.
Your best guess?
Best guess in the neighborhood of maybe 2 million or so. But again, that is purely an estimate, so I don't want to make that official because it's all dependent on what the cost of those materials once they're in fact purchased.
And when they went into Cortex, was there an exemption on personal property at that time too?
Kind of predates my arrival at Square. Now,
Yeah, that was the, in 2015, a similar bill was before the Board of Aldermen, and that provided 10 years, 100% personal property tax abatement.
Okay.
So this is,
For personal property, right?
right.
Okay.
This is 10 years, but 75% during years 1 through 5 and 50%.
So out of curiosity, since this is an expansion, so they're going to still stay in Cortex, or are they moving totally over?
we're moving, but it's definitely going to be a phased out approach.
Okay, so the personal property that's exempt in Cortex right now, how do you keep up with that inventory when it's time for reassessment, when you blend that with the new?
Yeah, a lot of that equipment, for instance, laptop computers, that it depreciates quickly, it gets replaced. Those replacement items, unless they're part of a new bond issue, are going to be subject to tax.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Alderwoman Davis.
I just want to ask a couple of more questions for more clarity on exactly what this expansion is going to provide to the city of St. Louis. And I read here, it says it will improve the general welfare of the city by bringing jobs and increased property earnings and payroll tax revenues to the city. But above and beyond that, I was wondering, Jay, if you could talk about some of the other services that are provided by Square, most especially the assistance to small businesses and how they help them not only with their accounting and small loans, all kinds of things. Just,
Certainly.
And tell us more. A lot of people just don't know.
Yeah, I think most of us understand Square as simply that card reader or that point of sale system. Beyond that, there's a whole other software component that allows small businesses to feel bigger. So when you go into small business, whatever your passion may be that brings you to own a small business, oftentimes you end up becoming a plumber, an accountant, a lawyer, because you got to fix everything. We try to alleviate that burden by allowing payroll, for instance. Rather than doing it on paper, you can do it through the point of sale system. Additionally, with that, you can track what you're selling and the revenues associated as well, so you can figure out what exactly people are buying and tailor your business to be more successful. In addition to that, we also do small business lending. For many of y'all, I'm pretty sure you've kind of heard the aches and pains of small businesses trying to gain capital from banks, for instance, and other financial lending institutions. We make it extremely easy for small businesses to access capital, and the beauty of some of our product is that you pay back your loan through swipes. So you don't have to worry about a monthly cost at the end. As you're doing business, you're instantly paying back to your loan as well. And beyond that, we also have Cash App, which is a peer-to-peer lending money exchange, which also is integrated to all our systems to allow businesses, again, to feel bigger than they are and to accomplish more.
And where do you get a lot of your ideas from that you all generate on a regular basis?
Talking to sellers. Our mission is economic empowerment, and a lot of these products have evolved because we are talking to small businesses. The way Capital, our small lending product, came to be is by interacting with sellers who said, hey, I want another coffee shop. I want more equipment to do more sales. However, I can't seem to get the capital for whatever reasons. And we decided to simply offer that capital at a reasonable rate to allow folks to scale up more so, hire more people, and be more interwoven into our communities.
Well, one thing we do know is that the small business owners are the ones who really make a difference in our economy. Yes, we have some Fortune 500, but at the end of the day, the way those are operated, it doesn't always give the opportunities that someone may have for the small resale shop or pottery-type place with creating unusual ceramics and all kinds of things. So looking at this resolution here, and also how you all balanced the actual tax abatement part of this is impressive. It means that you listened. I know you would have wanted more, but you listened.
Right.
And I appreciate that. And so I'm a big proponent of helping those smaller businesses have the ability to succeed. And I'm glad that you all chose to stay here, and most especially take a building that was about to be another big vacant building downtown. They were only using about 25% of it for the last 8 to 10 years. So thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman.
That's the end of my questioning.
Thank you, Alderman. Let's see. Alderman Kotar.
No questions.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little bit confused. The fiscal note, as prepared by the St. Louis Development Corporation, doesn't really have any information about what this would cost the city, there's nothing really in the fiscal note.
Noted, and I think I would defer to a member of SLDC to kind of speak more explicitly towards that.
I think it would be helpful to have these things sort of standardized in a way that actually outlines the fiscal impact in a meaningful manner, numbers. It looks to me from the board bill itself.
Are you all preparing an answer? I think, Alderwoman,
Well, I guess I was just going to expound on it. There is some fiscal information in the board bill, but I'm a little bit confused about.
I can start to answer some of your questions. They're looking for the scorecard that gives, like all their development projects, gives a more dynamic model of effect. But
They said it was attached to the TIF bill from last week. I may have that.
the
This right?
attached to this board bill is a plan for industrial development, which includes a cost-benefit analysis. This is a real, this is a static look at just the gross dollars, assuming they make, the maximum projected investment within, such and such a date. And if you look on Exhibit 1 to that cost-benefit analysis, we see that over the 10-year period, this is just the personal property tax abatement, you'd have 1.3 million in potential taxes generated by the city's ownership as part of the Chapter 100. Those taxes get wiped away, they become exempt, and then we've got about 400,000 of payments in lieu of taxes being generated for kind of a net abatement of around 900,000. And that's over 10 years. And that's gross numbers spread among all the taxing districts.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I think it would be helpful to, if we could have those in just the standard, and, if we're going to have fiscal notes, they should maybe
To be clear, make sure I understand what you're asking, Alderwoman. Would you like to see the initial analysis that was done?
No, I guess just moving forward, it just would be helpful if the fiscal notes prepared by SLDC had relevant information in them. This isn't really at least it doesn't read that way.
So because we did 3 bills last week, and things that were attached to those bills? Are you saying that you would like to see them carried over to all the bills if they are definitely companion bills? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, like a holistic approach. My questions were related to what does the overall subsidy package look like? What is?
Okay, so we covered that last week. We have all that, you mean where they do the scorecard and all of that stuff, that
Well,
detailed
this-
information?
Yeah, well, this bill.
So it was attached to-
Does have a fiscal, so I guess the fiscal note prepared
And
by
it has to be
SLDC
attached
doesn't have any fiscal information
to every
in it.
bill, but what I'm trying to explain to you with Board Bills 157, 158, 159, the overall scorecard and that stuff was broken down on there. And so what you're saying is, because these are companion bills, you would like to see that same document follow every bill, so you can get a full look at what's what.
I think it would be helpful, just in a general sense, not necessarily particular to this project.
Right.
And then, so that's one aspect. The other aspect would be just that the fiscal note that would be prepared would
It
have
standardized.
the standardized
Gotcha.
information in it. And so I think moving forward, it would be helpful if those things were just done as a matter of just consistency for every bill, not just these bills.
Yeah, my understanding is that the scorecard is usually attached to the fiscal note.
Sure,
It
exactly.
just
It just wasn't here. Yeah, that was my point. I just wanted to make it so that we could rectify that omission moving forward in a general sense. This is a 15-year lease, is that correct, on that post-dispatch building?
Correct.
Who is the owner of the property?
Star Lake Holdings, I believe.
And are they seeking subsidies for construction of the building separate from this?
I don't want to speak explicitly to that, given that I'm with Square.
Sure.
And they're in fact the developer, and we're simply moving into the building. So in an effort not to misinform, I will yield to, I think Dave may be in the room, able to speak to that more clearly, or Mark.
Dave Sweeney, I represent both Star Lake and Square,
Is that,
two separate entities. Correct. And so I'm here on behalf of Square today for the legislation before you.
and then was the developer
Yes, you voted on
package
it last week.
Okay. I
Yes.
apologize, I wasn't able to make
No,
that.
no, no, you did on the full board. No.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So that was those incentives.
Got it. And then will there be an ask for the state of Missouri as well?
Yeah, excuse me, yes. For the Missouri Works program, I believe it's a recent state program, that is something that we are pursuing as well at the state level.
Is there, could we prepare sort of an overall package that would include the city participation, the state participation, and maybe the project?
So
Just so we understand,
Okay, okay, so we can do that, but in what we did last week and what we did this, I don't think that we've set a precedent where every board bill that we hear down here, where we know everything that's going on with it, we specifically look at, what impact it will have to the city and what it's costing the city. Now, as a courtesy, we can see how developments are structured, whether it's tax credits or whatever, but I mean, that's why I keep saying this, if people have questions, they could ask, or they could, before we get to committee, you can delve really deep, and they will be more than willing to talk to you, tell you everything about it. We do have Michelle Stuck here. She can probably talk about that Works program, but I think that it would be good for us to start having an open line of communication amongst colleagues, outside of just what we do here in front of the public, so that anything you want to know at any time, if they don't have it, they can go get that information, because when we're here at the, the wee hour, and we're trying to present a bill and be expeditious in that process, sometimes people don't have the whole gamut with them, because it's very complex and has many layers to it, but she can definitely talk to that program for you.
And I think, I'll just mention this, that I think it would be helpful, just in a general sense, for projects that are complicated and have multiple bills. It would be helpful to put together that package, not just for this one. And certainly, I did appreciate the call yesterday, Jay, and I mentioned some of these exact questions to you at that time. So these aren't new questions for you in that regard. I did bring them up yesterday, so there was an opportunity to prepare for them, given that call you made yesterday. So but I do appreciate that. And I think moving forward, when we have bills that are interrelated, it would be helpful to pull them all together for an overall view, certainly not just as it relates to this project. So it would be, we don't have to.
If I could just, I want to make sure I understand, I want to be responsive as your chairperson. This is the fiscal, that's the fiscal note for this specific bill, and because this, the boxes are checked no, there's not as, the level of detail, I guess we are not spending money for this, we are waiving money, but are reducing money we otherwise might receive, so I suspect that is that what you were asking?
Well, I would just assume that the money that we would otherwise receive would be outlined as a matter of a fiscal impact, but if that's.
Well, I think that was, hopefully, that was incorporated in the presentation.
It was.
And in fairness to the Alderwoman from the.
It absolutely was.
And I think we should be probably able to get a copy of that relatively easily someplace.
Attached to those previous board bills, and I mean, they could get a copy of it. It'll tell you what they scored out of 5. I think it was like 4.7 something out of 5.
Okay. I guess our attorney is still working on the other thing. Is there, is Jonathan, is there a way of pulling that down and printing it over at the board and bringing it over here in a couple minutes? Or Jonathan, the spreadsheet from last week, or?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Are you?
But it doesn't apply
I'm okay
to
moving
this.
forward. I just want to make the point that
It
when we have
doesn't apply
interrelated
to
bills, we
this.
should put them together and have a holistic approach rather than sort of looking at the piece-wise incentives. So,
That was attached to all board bills last week. That's 157.
But, and just having a holistic understanding of what we're looking at from the city and state would just be helpful. And I'll leave it at that, and hopefully moving forward, I mentioned this to you yesterday, Jay, having an understanding of the full ask of taxpayers, whether they're city taxpayers or state taxpayers, would be helpful for all projects, including this one. This isn't particular to this project. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman Odenberg.
No questions?
Alderwoman Boyd. Stepped out. I just want to make a comment if there's no other, our last meeting, we had the economist from the Fed over here, and I think a number of people thought that was interesting. That was his second time. He was here about a year or so ago. And he was talking then, I thought it was a really interesting presentation. He was talking about the role of agglomeration, which is where you, the whole idea of getting industry clusters. And the term agglomeration, I think, is kind of an interesting term. And ironically, just yesterday, I think it was, or perhaps the day before, I don't know if anyone saw it, but the Brookings Institute came out and they had done a study with technology job growth. And it turns out that, I can't remember the time period, the last 5 or 10 years, this is a startling number. 90% of all technology jobs, the growth of all technology jobs, so for that time period, 90% of technology job growth occurred in 5 cities: Boston, San Francisco, San Jose, San Diego, and Washington, Seattle. And they were talking about the impact of agglomeration, how it becomes this snowball effect of rolling down the hill, and it basically sucks in like a vortex. All of the people in those industries having to go there, and once they have those jobs there, they have the workforce, and it is just so much easier to continue to grow. And the economic impact it's had, of course, it's created a tremendous amount of wealth disparity, far more than in our community in those 5 cities. But the recommendation of the Brookings Institute was that the federal government should work to go ahead and begin trying to spread the impacts of that agglomeration to a broader part of the economy, other areas of the country, I should say. And of the cities they listed that they felt was prime for that, was actually St. Louis, and it was, I guess, the first of the cities that they mentioned. And I just think that what we have going on in Cortex certainly kind of brought the company here. I was at the meeting, Jay, I don't think you were working with them at the time, where Jack Dorsey came in and McKelvey, and they had the announcement prior to the announcement of their expansion here. They met with the mayor, and the mayor, they asked the mayor what could they do for St. Louis, and she said, we could really use some help downtown. So she recruited them from Cortex to the Fifth Ward.
Thank you.
And I think I can't agree more that downtown, as much as I love what's going on in my ward, downtown is still the most important thing that we need to do. And I think that this is a very important project for us because I suspect it's the largest collection. Are those, explain the job, one last, the job level, the compensation, and, are these call center jobs, are we getting to the point where, I know initially when we were meeting with them, we were wanting to do more programming and begin getting higher skilled jobs.
Certainly. So at this current juncture, the skilled level jobs that exist are folks who are fielding calls and working out problems for some of our sellers that are encountering issues on the platform. Going forward, we definitely hope to build up our engineering capacity tremendously, and some of the pieces that are currently in play in the region will help towards that.
So, which is, having been through this for a little while, I can tell you, building a tech, and we are at the infancy over at Cortex relative to what it can be. But the number of pieces that civically you need, whether it's venture capital, whether you need to have experienced entrepreneurs, and then the entire kind of ecosystem of supporting talented workforce and so forth is just an incredibly difficult thing, to put in place. And I'm excited, for the opportunity that this project represents for the area. And even though I'm losing it in my ward, I think it's great for our city and is a, so if there's no other questions, the chair will entertain a motion for a due pass I guess we ought to go ahead and take up the board bill first. Board bill number 156. The chair will entertain a motion for
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Roll.
Objection.
Objection to previous roll. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Boyd. Chairman Rhodey.
Aye.
6 aye votes and 1 no vote.
Okay, and let's take up the companion resolution at this time. Chair will entertain a motion for resolution number 178.
I move to pass resolution 178 out of committee with due pass recommendation.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Previous roll.
Request for previous roll. Hearing no objection, we'll consider board resolution number 178 passed out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Alderman Martin, are you ready yet? Or oh, okay. I'm sorry. We're good.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah. Alderwoman?
I did have one question for Mr. Sweeney.
Mr. Sweeney?
Mr. Sweeney, you're representing both the developer and the I just have to ask. I just have to ask. Is that indicative? Did you wear those
I feel a
pants
joke coming
specific?
out about my pants.
Did you wear those pants specifically?
You're showing your hand already.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. I just.
Did I ruin your punchline?
You did. No,
I'm
that's
sorry.
good. I like it. It's good.
Is that a mistake?
It's actually all of Tom Villa's coats sewed into one pair of pants.
Okay, we'll take back up where we left off on Board Bill number 8, committee substitute, and we've just passed out the
I'm looking at yours, John Villas. Check, so. I don't know, it's simple.
Thank you.
Is the corrected committee substitute?
Well, let's look at it close, okay?
So is this what was actually emailed last night, or yesterday?
You could have handed it to the clerk.
No, this is something entirely new. This is what we have to go through next.
Okay, so I think where we left off is we were looking at the description of labor hours.
Yes, so we wanted section 15 to be consistent with the labor hours definition.
Which is, that is the bill that you just passed out, the committee that is in there, so we'll assume that that's, does not need an amendment.
Yes, correct. And then you'll see on the amendment that I just handed out on page 9 that in bold and underlined demolition and pre-construction are mentioned, are listed.
Okay, so we will, the chair will entertain a motion for Amendment 1 to Board Bill number 88, committee substitute.
I move we adopt amendment number 1 to Board Bill 88, committee substitute.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderman Kotar, Alderwoman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg, Alderwoman Boyd, Chairman Rhodey.
Aye.
6 aye votes.
So now we have the committee substitute properly amended. If there are no other questions on the underlying board bill, the chair will entertain a motion that we adopt Board Bill number 88, committee substitute, as amended.
So move.
Second.
Previous row.
Moved, seconded. There was a request for previous roll. Hearing no objection, we'll consider Board Bill number 88, committee substitute, as amended, passed out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Alderwoman. I know that was a yeoman's effort getting that done. We will continue. For the folks who, I'm not sure why everybody's down here, but in the event that Alderman Bosley or Todd show up, we will go ahead and continue to hold those until the end. We will at least hear them for the, in the event that there was a public hearing required, so we will provide an opportunity for people to speak to those. But we will hold them in committee because we have not gotten instructions from either of the sponsors, and we will endeavor to meet if necessary. Hopefully we can find out if there's a time urgency to any of those. But we'll continue, and they may end up showing up, and we may go ahead and pass those out. Let's see, I guess we're taking up some of my board bills, and I guess I'm in sponsor only on a couple of these things, so forgive me for not being terribly informed of them. Board Bill number 164, and I believe, Dale, perhaps you can stand up and advise us on why we're doing these. I think we're supposed to, or Tom, you want to speak to these? We're supposed to close these out after a certain period of time, is that correct?
That's in essence what it is. 164 is the termination of Lafayette Square, Historic District, and the 5700 Arsenal Special Allocation Fund. Those are two TIFs that the first one expired by time, and also the note was paid off. The second one is the note was paid off. So there's no need to have the special allocation funds anymore, and you have to terminate them under the statute by ordinance.
Okay.
Otherwise, we continue to collect the money in the special allocation fund, and then have to pass it through under the note ordinance.
So when we terminate it, then the money flows automatically to the appropriate.
As if the TIF never existed, correct.
Okay. Good. So this is
164.
Okay. Are there any questions of any of the committee members on 164? I think it's fairly cut and dry. Alderwoman, did you have a question?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, this is for the Lafayette Square
Yes, ma'am.
Historic District?
The TIFs.
I just wanted to be
164.
clear, yeah. Okay, and this,
Yeah, I believe that was a TIF that was created. That was one of the first TIFs in the city, was it not?
That one was done in 2001.
So it was one of the first TIFs in the city, and I believe that's, they did that, Dave Richardson, I did that as a neighborhood resident, volunteer, and they.
Chris
that is
Goodson.
how the-
Chris Goodson.
I guess he sponsored it, and I think Dave worked on it or something.
Well, Chris was a developer of,
But that's how
however
they
you wanna
got the
go.
fountain and the kind of.
Exactly.
The beautiful common area down there, so. Okay, if there are no other questions, the chair will entertain a motion that we pass out of committee Board Bill number 164.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Previous roll.
There's your request for previous roll. Hearing no objections, previous roll, we'll consider Board Bill number 164 passed out of committee with a do pass recommendation. Board Bill number 165. I believe this is a similar one.
Board Bill 165 is a termination of the Hadley Dean Special Allocation Fund. It originally was a TIF, and when the project was completed, the developer and SLDC got together and decided it could be a tax abatement, which saves some of the cost of issuance of the note. So there's no need for the Special Allocation Fund anymore. That was created in 2009.
So it was but the TIF was never.
It was a TIF, and as the project progressed, they decided that it was better to do a tax abatement as opposed to a TIF.
So the special allocation funds were never set up then?
No, it was set up. It was set up as a TIF, and then after they signed the redevelopment agreement and they did the construction, they came back and decided it's cheaper, there's no cost of issuance to issue a note, so they did a tax abatement.
Okay. And
So the TIF
never
became
really-
moot.
Yeah, okay. I think I understand that. So what you're saying is they never collected any earnings tax or anything like that, so.
City did, but the developer did not.
The developer did not, right. So we just used tax abatement and we didn't use any of the economic activities. We did.
And pilots, right.
Yeah, okay. Why did it take this long for it to come before us then?
I think it went back and forth how they were going to do it,
Is
Mr.
that
Chairman. I'm
project
not.
recently completed or?
It's completed.
A long time ago or?
I can't speak to that because I wasn't involved with the abatement, but the TIF lingered and lingered and lingered. And they finally signed a redevelopment agreement, and then they completed the project. And
Okay.
but it's done.
It's done and we didn't lose any of the, we didn't
We
expend
did not
any of the
expend
needs.
any of the pilots or REITs.
Tax abatement was just implemented a year or so ago, so it's not like a long time ago.
Okay, so did they come back in and did they have a separate bill for the tax abatement?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions of the committee on Board Bill number 165? Alderman from the 22nd.
I do. Tom, on page 1 of the board bill, on line 20, let's see, line 23, it kind of talks about the TIF on November 17, 2015, requiring commencement on November 2010.
That would have been commencement of the project. They had to begin building the project.
They started in 2010 building the project? Okay.
Well-
So let me ask you this. Did we have a TIF and a tax abatement approved at the?
No. When did you say, Dale, that the abatement was done? In 20?
Can Dale come to the mic, please? Mr. Chairman?
What
We
happened
asked Dale
was
to come to the mic.
Dale, would you step forward, please?
it was, Dale can answer this better than me. We did a TIF, but it never progressed, and they ended up with an abatement. Go ahead, Dale.
Right. Yeah, I don't remember when the abatement was approved, but I believe it was in a redevelopment area when they applied for the TIF, and then they decided they would opt for tax abatement instead, and so we implemented the tax abatement, and the TIF never went anywhere.
Okay. So it's in a redevelopment area which qualify for tax abatement anyway.
Right.
But then they wanted to do they thought they wanted to do a TIF.
Right.
We approved the TIF.
Right.
But they didn't execute on the TIF.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
Correct.
All right. No further questions. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing no other questions, the chair will entertain a motion on Board Bill
165.
Move to pass Board Bill 165 out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Previous roll.
Been moved, seconded, request for previous roll. Hearing no objections.
Section. Alderwoman Hubbard was not on the last roll call.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Boyd. Chairman Rhodey.
Aye.
7 aye votes.
Thank you.
Okay, the next board bill is another one where I sponsor. If anyone else would like to sponsor this board bill, please feel free. I will gladly substitute you. This is this exhibit is virtually unreadable.
And this is the report we have to do.
This is an annual report that's required to be done each year, updating TIFs at their 5-year intervals. We, as committee chair, I requested additional information so we could begin starting to track the progress and see if our underwriting is improving. And of course, because we provided additional information, in other words, the fact that we wanted to go ahead and have more information and more transparency, we ended up having a number of our colleagues object to this board bill, and it was a subject of considerable debate last year.
Do remember.
And we had a number of people. Can we get this larger so that we can actually read this? Can other people read this, or I know I'm getting old, so.
We have I mean, yeah, unfortunately, that's the size of attachment of the board bills.
But, I mean, you got this whole piece of paper here.
Are these all the tests?
Tabloid size.
Alderman, these are like, I think it's
on
like
the
5
copy
years.
machine.
So,
This is a 4-point.
they start like every 5 years, so
I
we'll have
can't do
5,
it, but
10,
still.
15, 20.
But this is all tips in the city, right?
But, no, only the ones that are seasoned 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15, and so forth, I believe. But why don't we go ahead and we can start, Dale, this is your work, isn't it? Why don't you kind of walk us through, and some of the younger members, or those with their glasses, might be able to read this.
Well, I apologize, because I somehow was able to read it, so I wasn't thinking about the fact that it needed to be larger. I will report, too, I was just over in Alderwoman Tyus's committee, and Alderman Todd is still over there, so hopefully he'll be coming back when that committee, when he's no longer, before this committee ends, hopefully he'll be available to come over for his bills. But he's over there at any, pardon? Okay, whatever. Okay, so this is the report that we are required to give every year, and there are a number of things that the state statute requires of the city as far as the TIFs are concerned. Each year, I mean, every 5 years, we're required to give this report. And so it means any project that's now 5 years old, or 10 years old, or 15 or 20 years old, are included in this report. This meeting is required to be noticed in the newspaper 4 consecutive weeks. So we have published in the newspaper the 16th, 23rd, 30th, and 7th that the public's invited to come to this public hearing dealing with TIF. And then we also have an annual statement that we're required, and I think I attached that to the bill as well, that we're required to publish, and that was published as well in the Daily Record, and its attachment, as I said, to Board Bill 178. And then finally, every year by November 15th, we have about a 6-page report that we need to send off to the state on each of the TIFs. So we sent off 119 of those reports by the deadline on November 15th. With regard to the 5-year report, and we thought we'd have a screen, but I don't know that they've been handed out. Take one of those and pass them over. It's a PowerPoint, and it simply goes through each project that is celebrating the anniversary. These are pictures of each one that you can look at if you would like. The first two, which are celebrating a 5-year anniversary, are Union Station and the Southeast Hampton I-44 project. As you know, the Union Station project, it's a $187 million project, and the TIF part didn't include the hotel. The hotel got tax abatement. So this is all the activity behind the hotel, which includes the 120,000 square foot aquarium, the 200-foot wheel, the mini golf course, the mirror maze, the rope course, the carousel, the sky rail, and 3 restaurants. They're all included in the TIF project. And all of that has been completed except for the aquarium, which, as you know, is to open on Christmas Day. So there were some 800 jobs created out of all of this, or will be created out of all of this. So it's obviously a significant project. The other project that is celebrating its 5 years is the one at Hampton and I-44, the Ackerman Toyota project, and that one includes about 77 jobs, and I'm sure all of you are aware that that has been open for, I would guess, about 1.5 years now, so it's obviously completed.
Dale, if you could you just, I don't want this for all of them, just so we understand, how the table works. Can we just take the Union Station project?
Okay.
Take a look at it on this table that you presented
Sure.
for us.
I'm going to ask Matt, are you the best one to go through the table? Yes. Okay. I'm going to ask Matt to come up and review the table with you. Do we have the table here? I do not. Is that the one we took off to get enlarged?
Yeah, we can grab one from the packet up.
Okay,
okay. Perhaps.
Yeah, maybe someone that's not there.
What is it? 178.
And then notion about everything was for downtown. It wasn't. They're all over the city.
Jeez. The lighting in here is on.
Yeah, I think that's part of the challenge, isn't it? It's in 2 parts.
Union Station. So this is our, so we'll read across starting on, at the top, it says project ID. This, as we move across with Union Station, we've got the total project cost, the amount of TIF awarded to the project, the percentage, the TIF as a percentage of the project cost. So in the case of this Union Station, we're at 12%. The project type, is it commercial, residential, mixed use, industrial? Then the ordinance number in the date it was approved. The status of construction, so this is just very recently being completed or still at the tail end of its construction, so it's under construction. The developer's name, and then as we'll flip to the next page, you can still follow across. Let's see. And then programmatic elements such as, not in the case of Union Station, but overall dwelling units, commercial square feet. I'm not sure why we don't have commercial square feet for Union Station, maybe because it's entertainment and well, the hotel's not included. And then the current estimate of jobs is not what is provided in the application, but what we've done is work with the comptroller to get the earnings taxes collected as part of the TIF, and then divided that by the average regional wage to estimate the total number of jobs rather than depend on the original application status. So that is a estimated and computed number based on comptroller data.
Why don't you take the enlarged version
Oh, yeah,
here, and it
thanks.
might be easier for you as well.
So we're on this side. So then, if a TIF note's been issued, this is the unpaid principal remaining on the TIF, the maturity date of the note, and then pilots collected since the inception of the TIF. So the total amount of pilots collected. So that's that's half of the basically the incremental property taxes. I'm sorry, that's the full amount of incremental property taxes. EATS is earnings taxes in retail sales and utility taxes, and that amounts to half of the EATS. The remaining flows through to the city, and then combination of the total TIF and EATS collected since inception. And then the next four columns are the ones we added last year per Alderman Rohde's request. And at that time, we did kind of go through this analysis with Alderman Rohde and Gerard and kind of showed our work. But the payments of principal and interest to date on the note is a number coming straight from the comptroller's data. And then using that and the interest rate on the note, the date the note was issued, and some of these other numbers, we created a model to estimate how the TIF had been performing over the time. So to be clear, this is not a detailed accounting of the project, but SLDC's estimate based on performance of the project based on comptroller data. So very briefly, and happy to go over this, and if anybody wants to get in the bushes at another time. But basically, what we did was we took the TIF, the total TIF amount, and a 23 straight amortization schedule, and then compared it to, and we plugged in numbers with the interest rate applied to the note. So we just assumed it was a 23-year loan with the interest rate on the note, and the principal amount would be the TIF amount. And then we compared that to, based on where we are today, how much principal had been paid, and what they said the principal remaining on the note was. We kind of would plug that into the timeline and project it out through the end of the 23-year period. So that's the high level of how we came up with our internal analysis of the performance of these TIFs. As you'll see, so the next column is the principal pay down compared to where we would expect it to be at this date. So as you'll see, a lot of these are negative. And I think as we kind of thought, first of all, it is important to note that is not the city's obligation to pay the differences in that debt. It's the developer who either will not get that full benefit of their original note or will have to pay. And I think when we look back at what this is saying to us is a lot of these were projects that were developed before like 2007 that were mainly residential projects. So they were heavily dependent on the assessed the property taxes. And obviously with the Great Recession, what was happening was these projects would come on board. They had interest rate on their notes. They would not they weren't performing as expected, and especially when the property values declined because of the Great Recession, the interest rate would continue to accumulate, and so even when the project would start performing, they would just be paying accumulated interest. So they got in a hole that they couldn't get out of. So this just shows the performance of those TIFs. And like I said, most of those are older projects. And some were projects such as Railway Exchange that have really just never gotten off the ground. And then, based on that, in that same analysis, we just kind of estimate if a project is ahead or behind schedule, again, because a lot of these are in the red. A lot of them are years behind schedule. But once the 23 years hits, it ends. This would just be theoretical if they continue to go, how far behind schedule they are. And then the final column kind of builds upon that again, and it's just the projected payoff years ahead of schedule, or the amount it would be the amount it would be behind at when the 23-year period ends. So that is that's our analysis of the TIFs currently on this 5, 10, 15, 20-year, and then I think now that we have got the data in line and we've done this twice, we are going to just do this annually for all the TIFs, but obviously we present it as part of this annual report every year. So happy to answer any questions.
Well, I just want to make sure that, looking at the Union Station, so on the one side, we know, so it was a $155 million project. We know what the TIF amount was. We know the percentage, commercial, the ordinance number. Okay, so this looks like you're collecting, have the, on the second side of it,
Some pilots.
you have unpaid TIF principal. So have the TIF notes not been issued yet on this then, for Union Station?
Unpaid TIF principal.
Tom is saying in the affirmative, they've not been issued yet.
Okay.
That's blank on Union Station.
Right.
Yeah. So
But we've already collected, the notes haven't been issued, but we've collected, what, about over $2 million, right? In
Right.
increment?
Yeah, we have collected increment. So,
So if the notes haven't been issued and we have $2 million of increment, how does that work anyway? Are they?
Isn't it accumulated in the special allocation fund?
Yes, it's accumulated in the special allocation fund. And it's super sinker note, so on the date that we issued it, the first, I think it's May, would be the payday on this one. You would pay that full $2 million down on the note. The note gets issued.
So then they would then issue, instead of,
No, it's still the same amount. The amount doesn't change. Of the TIF note, it stays the same as you guys authorized, unless the clawback reduces it, which probably won't on this one. So you issued a note, the first payday, I would think, is May of this year, if we did it right now, and you would pay that full $2 million down on the note.
$2 million down, so the.
Down.
So the note would then have an outstanding balance of $6.5 million, or would it be accruing from day one?
No, it accrues from the date of issuance, the interest, but you pay it down with whatever you have, if it's a super sinker, you get rid of it.
Okay, but we're not, so we're going to issue a note for less than 18.5, is that right? Because we've already got 2 million?
No, you're going to issue it for the amount that you authorized, but you will pay that amount down immediately.
What will I pay down?
That note that was issued.
No principal amount.
Yeah, the original principal that you authorized. You just have $2 million available to pay down the original amount authorized on that note.
Okay, but it doesn't start accruing interest until the day that
The note is issued.
Right.
Correct.
So they issue the note of $16.5 million. We got $2 million in a special allocation fund. We pay that leaves $16.5 million outstanding then?
I mean, after the first payment, the note would, if I understand correctly, the note would still be issued for 18, but your first payment would be that $2 million. So then your balance would go down to
Yeah, the
16.
remaining balance then would be 15, yeah.
Yeah, well, that was what I was
Yeah,
asking.
okay, yeah.
Okay. So then, out of all of these, we have a couple that were retired prior to 110 North Newstead and the Center for Emerging Technologies. Both of those were retired prior to 23 years, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then we have a couple that were never used, I guess, the automotive roll one.
Oh, they are retired as well.
Okay, so those are retired. So that means that we underwrote those off?
Yeah.
Those performed fairly well.
Pappy's was part of that, and it had a great income.
Okay.
I mean, really great income.
Yes, right.
And then how about this the Bottle District, that never.
That's not gone anywhere.
That never happened. And then Park Ridge Estates, that looks like that turned out.
That's one you just dissolved today.
And that turned out well. Is that correct?
Right, it paid off in 15 years, something like that.
Okay. What about Loughborough Commons then?
So, because we made up our own model, we made up our own model, it couldn't account for the fact that a new note was issued. It basically had an original note, but it's cash flowing very well.
Yeah, there was, to my knowledge, there were bonds issued in addition to the note so that the developer got his money when the bond was issued. But I didn't participate in it.
We had to go back and refigure that, if I remember right, because they had some problems, but it still performed well afterwards.
Northside Regeneration,
That just started.
okay. And then, but other than that, all the rest of them are underperforming then, right?
Yes. Yes.
And then, what type of diagnostics, what have we done wrong? You said that, because, I believe most of these are intended to pay off, in about 12 to 15 years?
I would assume so, yes.
Well, I think most of them were like 17, 60 years, yeah.
Okay. So, so you said that some of the issues that we had were,
I think a lot of the ones on this list are not, obviously Loughborough Commons an exception, are residential projects. So they were heavily dependent on pilots to pay back the TIF. And when the Great Recession happened, I think combination of property values weren't going up as fast as expected, and the Great Recession meant that the pilots weren't appreciating at the rate that were originally anticipated by the developer and any consultant that ran numbers.
Are there any other patterns that we can identify in this as far as who did the underwriting or what kind of underwrite? So the pilots, projects with the EATs, did the retailing end up, I would think the retailing, that was usually 125 coverage, and you only got half of the retail, so.
Yeah, Loughborough, at least as far as what it's putting into the allocation fund, like I said, it doesn't quite, we're working with the comptroller's office to figure that out, but it doesn't quite fit the model that I built for this, so we couldn't, because of the way the numbers came in on the two different debt obligations. But the amount of pilots and EATs collected is, if you look at the total, it's right now it's almost it's almost double or more than double the unpaid principal at this point. But that note was just issued, and it was double the TIF amount. So it's cash flowing well, but we need to look at the payoff specifically. All as I went through this, almost all of the other ones are residential. So that
Kind of let's see, if we went ahead and did residential, and in essence, we granted them 23 years of tax abatement, then is that?
I mean,
That would be
essentially,
nice.
right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I think as you know, we've been scrutinizing both abatements, and now we haven't had a lot of TIFs lately, but, you know, we're scrutinizing this in a more advanced way going forward. So we hope that, you know, we would see that trend change.
I mean, this is going to be, I don't know what it'll be like. You never know what sets off the debate in the board, but this may be, we may have to talk offline.
Welcome to do that.
I want to make sure I understand everything. Dale, just for the record then, if we do not pass this for whatever reason, what is the consequences of, we're just out of compliance with state law?
Oh, well, the state law required us to have this hearing today. I don't know that it required us to do anything beyond that, though obviously the board bill would be nice to get approved eventually. I don't think last year you finally approved the board bill until sine die, I think it was. But, so whatever, you know, but we are in compliance with the state statute at this point.
Do we have to pass the board bill, or is it just a matter of us having this hearing?
I'd like to confer with our legal consultant on that, but no, as I read the state statute, there isn't anything required that we pass a board bill, no.
I'm sorry, I'm dominating all the questions here. Are there any other questions by committee members? Alderman Boyd, do you have any questions of this board bill?
No questions.
Alderwoman Davis, any questions?
No questions. I like the packet that you passed out to us, and I would suggest that every alderperson gets this package.
Oh,
Because
okay.
it gives a clear identification on where we've actually had TIFs, which is all over the city, not in just one corridor, and different types of projects that were supported.
Sure, good.
So I think this is a good document.
Wherever we were able to find before shots, we put those in there, but sometimes the before shot really doesn't show. If you're rehabbing a building that's in reasonable shape, sometimes it doesn't look too much different, but at any rate.
Also, we've had staff go through all the legal descriptions of the TIFs and remap them. So they're all online now, and accurate. So we've got that. If anybody's interested in looking at a TIF map online, it is available.
And maybe one day we'll get to the point where, as we are trying to grow and develop this city on a larger scale, most especially so that people can have a better quality of life with jobs and experiences for living, we will do area-wide TIFs to alleviate a lot of the piecemealing that's going on. Thank you.
Alderwoman Hubbard, any questions?
He stepped away.
Alderman Kotar.
No question.
Alderwoman Spencer stepped away. Alderman Oldenburg.
No questions.
Alderwoman Boyd. If there are no other questions, the chair will entertain a motion on Board Bill.
What is this?
178.
178.
Okay, 178.
I move that we adopt Board Bill 178 with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Previous row.
Hearing no objection, we'll consider Board Bill number 178 passed out of committee with a due pass recommendation. And we have been joined by Alderman Todd. Alderman, we have several board bills before us, and if you'd like to take the hot seat up there.
Do you have the board bills?
Sure.
We have everything.
We can get them for you here, Alderman.
May not be in that one.
You have 143.
Here we go.
Oh, there you go.
143 and 144. I think so.
There you go.
Oh, I've been in a lot of schools and senior buildings. I think I'm getting sick.
Stay out of those places.
God.
Good morning, Honorable Committee, Housing Committee. Thank you for hearing my board bills. I have a gentleman who has more experience than I do who will be here with me, so I do need a lot of assistance from the gentleman. The first board bill is 143. This board bill amends ordinance 69519, which amended ordinance 64728, dated July 24, 2013. Ordinance number 69519 approved a Chapter 99 redevelopment plan for the Washington, Vanderbilt, Pendleton redevelopment area. This bill extends the time to complete the project in the area to May 1st, 2029. Let me say that I support the bill. And it will help improve the neighborhood, create jobs, take care of some blight, and we need, and so, you want to further?
I'll just, really, I don't have a lot to add, but you'll recall we've done this in several other areas over the last year where we have redevelopment areas, large redevelopment areas, and the time frame for their completion has expired. And yet, I think it's the alderman's interest and in our interest to allow particularly rehab of residential, but some, other smaller projects in these areas to continue without having to come back to the Board of Aldermen with each of these. And so this is each of these are the same, essentially. They're two adjacent areas. These are just to the north of Del Mar and east of Kings Highway, between Kings Highway and Vandeventer. These two combined are those areas. So we're just extending out, giving developers another 10 years to do individual projects within this. And if that's the case, then we'll give them the tax abatement that the original bill allowed. So that's it in a nutshell.
Dale, could you tell us, and forgive me, Alderman, if I direct some questions at him, because I've been down here a long time, I'm still learning, and when we do these larger 99 areas, obviously when we're doing individual development projects, we see those over here, either in the Neighborhood Development Committee or HUD's committee. Are we seeing much activity in the 99 areas that will never come, that we don't see the ordinances over here?
Well, I think if it's a major project, you're going to see it. But these are almost always, might be an infill house, might be a rehab of a house, so you would not see those.
To say, is there much activity in these areas?
Well, the West End area, which we did, a few months back, is quite active. There's a lot going on. In these areas, there have been a couple of projects, but thus far, there hasn't been a lot, but it's an area we're really trying to encourage development to occur north of Del Mar. And so our hope is...
I'm excited about having this. And
our hope is that we'll see a lot more activity, in the near future than what we've seen so far.
And the North Serve project is in the boundaries here as well.
It is, yeah.
So, why don't we go through and see if there's any question. One last thing is, I guess is this for full 10 years then, or?
Actually, this one is for 15 years, I believe, yes.
No, you got 2029.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, yeah, it isn't.
The extension is for 10 years.
No, it is just 10 years, you're right, I'm sorry. No, it's a 10-year tax abatement.
To be clear, it references, are some of them 10 years and some parcels 15 years? That's what it appears.
It would be 15 years if there was low-income housing tax credits involved in the project.
Got it.
Yes.
It says 15-year for 39 on Washington, 39 4,000 blocks of Washington, it looks like. So it's 10 to 15 years, and that conforms to the map that we've all passed and all that. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, the map for this area is definitely a 10-year plus map.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and provide the committee some opportunity to ask questions. Alderman Boyd?
Oh, he just stepped out.
Alderwoman Davis.
Oh, I just wanted to say that I'm glad to see the extension because there is a development plan for that area that is being used, and developers have an opportunity to go and look at the desires of that community. And it has there's a separate plan for the 18th Ward, and there's a combined plan that includes the 18th and the 19th Ward that we approved. And so it's good to see that the activity has picked up in the 18th, most especially, more than the 19th in that area. So that's exciting. That is really exciting. And it's really great to have these Chapter 99s so that you can get things moving faster. Thank you.
Alderman Kotar, any questions?
No, Mr. Chairman. Best of luck to you, Alderman. Hope we can get this area developed.
Thank you very much. Alderman Oldenburg, any questions?
No questions.
Okay. Alderman, just so you understand, so the Neighborhood Development Committee that you sit on, generally what would happen is if there's kind of a one-off project somewhere, we would introduce a piece of legislation and it would go over there, and it requires a specific ordinance in order to get the tax abatement. We spent several years, and your predecessor used to serve on this committee that we worked with, was very involved and made some alterations specifically for your ward on grading, kind of graduating the amount of incentives that we would use, and we created a map, and that map provides, we went out and we looked at a variety of different measures within census blocks, and those neighborhoods that had strong development activities, we squeezed down the amount of incentives, and in other parts of the city, we actually increased the amount of incentives based on that by census block. So the discussion that was happening the other day at the Neighborhood Development Committee was, the idea was that we would take all of these decisions away from the Board of Aldermen and try to make them scientific, or we would use, centralize it, and it would all, the incentives would all be based on a formula based on how strong a neighborhood was and how much money the project made for the city. And so that's, we did a lot of work on that for the last several years. I think most of us down here recognize that as a real improvement over what it was, so that we could become very objective and do these things, in that the aldermen would not meddle very much. However, when we do, most of the aldermen, when they introduce something, would bring it down here and it would require a special ordinance. What this does for you is kind of makes it even easier for folks in your area. They will be able to go ahead and actually access tax abatement greater than those projects that you were before your committee yesterday. So they're actually getting tax abatement more, at a higher level than what your committee was hearing yesterday, and they'll be able to get it without a specific ordinance introduction. So that's what we're trying to do here, to actually streamline it for you, and and give you a very generous incentive by most neighborhoods. I wouldn't say most neighborhoods, but many neighborhood standards in other parts of the city. And I don't know if we've done a very good job of sharing that kind of information with some of the new alder people down here. Dale, is sharing the map and how all that works and everything. So
Sure, good.
Anyway, so if there's no other questions on Board Bill number 143, the chair will entertain a motion that we pass out Board Bill number 143.
So moved.
Second, previous roll.
Moved second, a request for previous roll. We'll consider Board Bill number 143 as heard and passed out of committee with the due pass recommendation. Board Bill number 145.
Again, thank you for hearing the bill. Board Bill 145. This board bill amends Ordinance 69410, which amends Ordinance 67013, dated February 20, 2013. Ordinance number 69410 approved a Chapter 99 development plan for the Vandervender, Finney, Washington, Taylor redevelopment area. This board bill extends the time to complete the project in the area to May 1st, 2029. I support the bill. I hope I can get your support. Thank you very much.
Dale, this is the same thing. It's
Same
just
thing,
a
yes.
Slightly different geographic area.
Right.
And same
Yeah,
level-
one's,
Same level of tax abatement and everything?
yeah, one's just east of the other,
Okay.
but on the north side of Del Mar.
Are there any questions, Alderman Boyd?
No questions.
Alderwoman Davis?
No questions.
Alderman Kotar?
No questions.
Alderman Oldenburg?
No, sir.
Hearing no other questions, the chair will entertain a motion to pass out of committee with a due pass recommendation for Board Bill number 145.
So moved.
Second?
Previous roll.
Moved, second, request for previous roll. Hearing no objections, we'll consider Board Bill 145 is heard and passed out of committee with a due pass recommendation. You know, I'm thinking regarding Alderman Bosley's bill, Board Bill number 37, I don't think, congratulations, Alderman, you're done for today, so
Well-
you'll have your second reading on Friday.
Okay, thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay, thank you very much.
I
Mr.
don't
Chairman.
think anyone else is down here on Board Bill number 37. I think that might have been placed on the agenda by mistake. I don't think he particularly wanted to hear it, but if nobody is down here for that. Am I missing something, or are we done here today?
I think that's it.
I think that is it. All right, if there is nothing else, I think we're done for this year. Unless Alderman, well, I think we're done for this year. And so we will convene next year, and hopefully we'll have the agenda out before we come back. So, thank you all.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.